everybody. What the flick? We are here. We are back reviewing the X-Files. Meredith Plaka couldn't be here this week, unfortunately. We wish her all the best. She'll be back soon. But in her stead, we have Witney Seibold, my co-host of the B-Movies podcast.
Why, hello, everyone.
This is the only show he watches that doesn't immediately get canceled. So that said, maybe we only have like 3 episodes left.
Almost human, man. Broke my heart. It was so close.
Before we get started, so people have noticed that the last couple episodes have underwhelmed me. What have you been thinking of this series so far and the X-Files in general?
Well, I mean, it's kind of refreshing to see the characters back. I'm not sure why they felt the need to bring them back at this point, but that they have is fine. And I feel like the last 2 episodes have been getting used to having them back, and we haven't had like a real episode yet.
Okay, is this the episode?
This is the episode where they're finally kind of back.
Yeah.
I feel like the X-Files only has a certain 4 or 5 different types of episodes.
Okay, so we got
historically there were the
conspiracy episodes.
conspiracy episodes, like the story arc episodes.
Yeah, the important ones. No, the bees and the black goo are doing stuff.
And yeah, the black oil, whatever the heck that one was about. All of that part of the same conspiracy. So we've had kind of 2 of those so far, and those always take 1 or 2 episodes. Then there's the usual Monster of the Week episodes,
Which was also kind of last week episode.
a little bit. There's the sort of relationship episodes, which is about how Mulder and Scully are will they, won't they. Of course, now they have, so those aren't interesting anymore.
Right.
And then there's the comedy episodes, your Jose Chung's from Outer Spaces and your Bad Bloods.
Many of them written by Darren Morgan, who wrote and directed this episode.
That's right.
He wrote Jose Chung's from Outer Space. He wrote Clyde Breckman's Final Repose, won an Emmy for that. And he took over Millennium for one glorious season when Millennium was actually awesome.
When it was actually kind of fun to watch.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're finally back, and we get a comedian, Rhys Darby, to play the Monster of the Week.
Yes.
And the episode is about sort of the existential crisis of Mulder, and I think in a way about the existential crisis of the X-Files in itself.
A little bit.
And I think it's really very clever.
Yeah, I buy this, like, in the first episode, we had this whole bit about how Mulder is like, oh, wait, maybe the conspiracy I've been thinking about wasn't real all along. And a part of it's like, you jerked us around for how many seasons?
It was 10.
Yeah.
But this is the 10th season.
Here it feels kind of genuine just by setting up, a lot of the things that were big mysteries have been solved and explained by perfectly rational science. Maybe there isn't anything left to discover. That's a good setup for an emotional journey for Mulder in an X-Files episode.
Well, and I also like that it's sort of addressing that these characters are now a decade older and they can't really run around chasing after monsters the way they used to.
Yeah.
And Mulder's getting a little tired of it. He has his midlife crisis. And what does he do? He finds a monster who is also having an existential crisis because all of a sudden he's suddenly a human.
It's weird though, because like when you think about it, Mulder has supposedly been off the grid, not investigating cases actively for so long that you would think going back to the X-Files would be the thing that revitalizes him out of his midlife crisis. Instead, it just shot him back in. It's like they talk about whether or not Mulder is actually on meds. Right. In this episode. Like the psychologist offers him some, but apparently Scully says, are you taking your meds?
Before popping his view himself.
Yeah, and I just, there seems to be like this sort of inherent tragedy to Mulder now, more so than ever. He used to just be this lovable kook. Ha, isn't it funny that he likes all these things? Now it's like, no, there's something seriously wrong with Mulder, and maybe he shouldn't be an FBI agent, but we need to keep an eye on him.
He didn't care before, and then it ruined his life, and now he kind of cares what other people think about him and what he's going to do with his life.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious as well.
It is. This is and Gillian Anderson is wonderful in this episode. She is so... She even talks about
the scene where she rips her shirt off.
I don't just like the scene where she rips her shirt off, but that is a great scene. No, that's a funny scene. That scene reminded me of Bad Blood, the Rashomon episode, with all the vampires, where everyone's version of the story was goofy and silly in different ways. That was very, very fun. But she even has a line where she talks about how I forgot how much fun these cases could be. And I'm like, yeah, 2 episodes in, yes, remember that they should be fun? That's the thing. They don't always have to be goofy. This is a very goofy X-Files episode. Yeah. Not that it's uniquely goofy. Well, there are other goofy episodes.
I was kind of hoping they'd save the funny one for near the end of this 6-episode run, because I feel like now what do we have to look forward to? Just more conspiracy stuff.
And also the look of it. Like X-Files is a lot glossier now. Like when the X-Files was originally on the air, it had that sort of David Fincher flashlight beams in the smoky caverns.
It was all very foggy.
It was very foggy. It was very gross, and that was part of the allure, was that it had this very serious, grim look to it, and that's why the comedy was able to jump out at you sometimes, because you didn't see see it coming because it looked so different. Here, everything is very slick. And for a while, I was like, the opening with the stoners, with the Mad Max Fury Road breaking.
The Huffers, they're doing the...
I thought that was a movie within a movie for a few minutes. I was like, we're going to like pull back and we're going to see a monster watching the show or something.
Well, the original show was shot on film, and they still have the original film masters, and I'm guessing this new one is done digitally, so it's going to look a lot different no matter what. And it still feels a bit like the X-Files, but it does look more modern. You can't compare the two and say, you can't just pick up and say, oh, this looks the same. It doesn't. It looks like a decade has passed.
We need to talk about the absolute brilliance of the conceit, which is the monster who is bitten by a man and becomes a wereman.
And I love that we never find out who that man is. There's just a guy running around biting people.
I thought that was the serial killer. I thought that was the whole point.
Oh, that was the guy?
I thought that was a serial killer.
Oh, I thought it was just some other guy.
No, I
think the serial killer was another third guy.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it was a serial killer.
Okay.
Yeah, just bit a monster.
There's a serial killer who bites a monster, and the monster turns into a wereman.
And the idea, I just knew how to wear clothes, and I knew I needed a job, and I knew I needed a mortgage, even though I don't know what that is. I was just like, it's so. There's something beautiful about it.
He becomes a man, and he inherits all of man's neuroses as a result. As an animal, he had nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he's neurotic about getting a job and like finding companionship and writing his great novel. All of a sudden, this is an impulse in him.
Which sounds like a Saturday Night Live sketch, but there's so much pathos because of how Rhys Darby plays it. Like, he's really sad about it.
Well, Rhys Darby is the perfect choice because he's kind of an off-kilter comedian who can play it completely deadpan.
Yeah.
Which is what you need.
Yeah.
And Rhys Darby from Flight of the Conchords, who wears the Kolchak the Night Stalker outfit.
He does.
Which
That's
adorable,
isn't it? Yeah. A lot of good shout-outs.
Yeah, really brings in sort of this unexpected humanity to the character while still making it funny.
There's a lot of good shout-outs in this episode. We had, obviously, the headstones of Kim Manners and I think was one of the first assistant directors. So that was a nice little thing there. Also, they remembered that Scully is immortal. For those who don't remember this, in Clyde Bruckman's, there's a conspiracy theory that says Scully's immortal because in Clyde Bruckman's final repose, Clyde Bruckman, who can see how you die, looks at Scully and says, "You don't die.
You just live forever."
I just figured that meant she didn't die before Clyde Bruckman dies.
I thought that just meant he didn't want to tell her because she's not the kind that can wear that well.
But in keeping with Clyde Bruckman's final repose, Scully picks up a dog at the end of this episode. Also named after a character from Moby Dick.
That's right.
Yeah, because it was Queequeg before, and now it's Daggoo. Good old Daggoo.
Daggoo.
Give her the Daggoo. One of the best lines I've heard in a long time, TV, movie, whatever, is in this episode. It's a psychologist. That character is great, X-Files. But he has that...
That's like the great Yappy. It's like this weirdly, this like hugely broad character which doesn't fit in the X-Files at all.
Oh, but he's great. But he has Mulder has a bit like, not everything can be reduced to psychology. That's what you think.
Isn't that adorable?
That's a really, really great line. I don't know. What are your other thoughts? What do you think of this episode, just in general? What do you think about the
I think that if this was the episode they showed before the 6th and final episode of them all, where clearly they just have to wrap everything up, that would have been great. If this was the last episode, I would have been totally happy.
Yeah.
Where because it doesn't end in some sort of big way, but it wraps everything up for Mulder.
It kind of does. This is actually
sweet... He has his existential crisis, and he kind of gets to face it, and it kind of is resolved at the end of this. And I feel like if we go out with Mulder on this note, it would have been perfect.
One of the problems with the X-Files as a show is that it was kind of one of the shows that created the serialized genre entertainment as we know it. Before that, everything was kind of episodic. You can take any of the old Star Trek episodes, the original series, play them out of order, and they more or less work.
Right.
More or less. A couple of things are off.
And that happened because Gillian Anderson got pregnant. They had to write her out of the show for some reason, so they came up with this story arc to explain her away, and that's where all of the story arc stuff came from.
Well, yeah. But what happened... But the thing is that, X-Files has always kind of ridden that line where in order to have that proper episodic structure where it really doesn't matter what order you see it in, I've heard the X-Files described as our generation's Twilight Zone, for better or worse, just has the same protagonist every week. You need to have a certain amount of consistency.
Right.
But if you want to have a serialized narrative, you need to have growth and character arcs and development. And those two things are diametrically opposed. So the idea that Mulder needs to, in order to sort of preserve this dramatic setup, Mulder needs to constantly be the believer who no one believes. Scully needs to constantly be the skeptic. And here we have one where Mulder gets over stuff, and it's like next week he won't be.
Right.
Like, I can only get. This is one of the reasons why I think so many of the X-Files marathons were so great, because you only remember the highlights.
Right. Well, I think this one's really clever about that, though, because it gives Mulder a crisis that he would have had at this point in the series. We're bringing back the show. This isn't something he had originally. So he's going to get over it, and now we're going to get sort of back into the swing of things. So the next 3 episodes can be Monster of the Week, and they can feel like the old serial.
I still feel like this could have been an episode. You could have had an episode of the original series where Mulder was just like, everything's getting solved. I'm getting tired of it. I'm burnt out. It just would have been a burnout episode. Who hasn't felt burnt out on their job? So, yeah. Anyway, this is, I've heard some people say, this is the best episode. One of the best episodes ever.
It's the best episode of the 3 of the return of the X-Files.
I will say this. It's the best X-Files episode in many years. Even going back to when the show was on.
Like most people, I watched the show until it started to shift around season 7, season 8.
Once you got Doggett and Reyes, you're just like, I don't really
nobody
care.
cares anymore.
I just like, some just sort of mention, it's like that Doggett and Reyes existed would be kind of polite.
Yeah,
you know,
like
just to sort of mention
a cameo or something.
Something, a little newspaper headline or something that shows that they like rescued a puppy from an alley.
Or that they died in some horrible accident together.
I saw the whole series. I barely even remember what happened to Doggett and Reyes. I think they're fine. I don't know.
So
anyway,
factoring in that, yes, this is the best episode in many years.
Yes, definitely. So we really enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed it too. We will see you next week. Hopefully Meredith will be back. And if not, we've got Witney Seibold here, who's very wonderful. And you can hear us every week on the Movie Movies Podcast. So awesome. Take care.
Bye.